right. Good morning. We're a week away from the first game, so we're just kind of making our way through the videos. So now I'm going to do the number three team, which I had to be Brian and Ocelotta touchdowns, which, again, I still cannot really pronounce that, but I digress. So I guess we'll just start things off, kick it off. So at number 23 overall nomination, you spent 67 on Jonathan Taylor. I was happy to see this. Taylor is in, I think I had this conversation last night with Stefan, but Taylor is in the prime of his career. He's one of the few remaining, clear bell cow backs, as we like to call them. He's had a season already where he was the clear number one fantasy player in football, which was 2021, so it's been a few years since then. He hasn't made as much of an impact the last few years as a pass catcher, but to be honest, I think that has more to do with the quarterback situation than anything he's done, or even the offensive line. He gets a heavy rushing workload. I don't think that's changing. Yeah, we went away from Anthony Richardson to Daniel Jones. So, Daniel Jones had a good season with Saquon Barkley, but Saquon Barkley, other than the seasons where he got hurt, had pretty good seasons with the Giants. He wasn't what he is now, but I think with the Colts, they have good receivers. The offensive line is not very good. They're replacing two starters who, funny enough, both went to Minnesota. But they are decent at developing linemen, so maybe the offensive line won't be bad. I'm just more concerned with the fact that because the quarterback situation is Daniel Jones is our starter, and then if Daniel Jones gets hurt, because he gets hurt quite often, Anthony Richardson is the starter. And neither of them are terribly accurate. So I don't think Taylor's going to get a lot of work receiving, just because it doesn't seem like they're doing a lot of that. But I think he will be relied on heavily as a rusher. So he's probably going to get at least 325 carries if he stays healthy. So I could see, last year, he had 1,400 yards. So I could see a 1,500-yard season. I can see another 200 yards receiving. We're probably talking 12, 13 touchdowns. He's a bona fide top 5 fantasy running back. You paid for him at cost. I don't mind it, especially considering the fact that Chase Brown went for $70 and Jonathan Taylor went for $67, and Taylor basically had the season that you're hoping Brown had for half a season, whereas Taylor's been doing this for his entire career. So, yeah, all things considered, I think that is a terrific player to start as the foundation of your team. And this is also where I insert, hey guys, it's not random the fact that every team but one in our league that has won a championship had a top 5 running back. The caveat is there's an asterisk. Vivian did win without a top 5 back. However, that is also the year Alvin Kamara was injured. So when he came back, lo and behold, he's a top 5 back. Surprise. Yeah, that was his rookie year. He didn't play the first 4 games. He was injured for the first 2. And then they traded away Adrian Peterson after the 4th week. And it was Kamara's job, week 5 on. And he was the number 3 fantasy running back in football. So, yeah, I put that as an asterisk, which means the only team to ever win a title without a top 5 fantasy running back is Holly. So, yeah, it's important to have at least one anchor, hero, whatever you want to call it, running back who you kind of believe in. But we're going to get more into that with the next team, funny enough. So 35 overall nomination, $27, Brian Thomas Jr. We talked about it, you and I, after the draft. This was a steal. This is crazy that you got Brian Thomas Jr. for $27. Great pick. He had almost 1,300 yards last year. He had 10 touchdowns. And the fact that he's going for basically half of Malik Neighbors, and I I mean, I get it. People don't believe in Jacksonville, but like this is like too much, man. Like this is kind of like crazy. Like Brian Thomas Jr. went for less than Lad McConkey. Uh, Freaking Malik Neighbors went for like 52. Like that's he went for $2 more than Trey McBride, and he's coming off like a monster top 10 fantasy season. I baffling, baffled. I think his I think his production will go up because they actually have a competent coach, or at least a competent offensive mind. I can't say coach yet because I need to see what Cohen can do. But they took the Bucs offensive coordinator, Liam Cohen, who was the offensive coordinator last year for just a season with the Bucs, and he's now the head coach. And Cohen is most well known for being able to bring efficiency to their run game, have a steady blocking scheme, and airing it out. He had the best season of Baker Mayfield was last season. He was so incredibly efficient. Now, is he going to be able to get that out of Trevor Lawrence? I am hesitant to say that, but to be fair to Trevor Lawrence, he's had like maybe one good, not even really good, just good season. And I think just a level of competency from an offensive line standpoint will make the Jaguars better. They're probably my pick to win that division. All of that is to say, I think Brian Thomas Jr. will have a better season. The one caveat is, obviously, they spent the number 2 pick on Travis Hunter Jr., who's also going to be playing some defense. But the point is, Travis Hunter's there. So I'm kind of cognizant of the fact that Brian Thomas Jr., while being the elite number 1 guy, Travis Hunter is there for a reason. He's there to take some of the load off. And Travis Hunter's traits, his athletic ability is elite. As much as I love Brian Thomas Jr., and I think he's like a great speed guy, really good after the catch, Travis Hunter is like, I mean, he's the closest thing to Deion Sanders since Deion Sanders. That's a crazy thing to say. So just be cognizant of the fact there's going to be some weeks where like Hunter's probably the number 1. But otherwise, I mean, putting that in, $27 on Brian Thomas Jr. is crazy. So 1,300-yard season, I think he'll even be better. I don't know if he's going to get as many touchdowns. He got 10 last year, so maybe like 7. But we're talking ballpark what he was last year, which was essentially like he was like 19th in targets, and I'm thinking that's going up to like at least top 10. They're more of a pass-heavy team with Cohen, and yeah, he's a bona fide top 5 receiver. Getting that for 27 is outrageous. I mean, even if you want to say he might not, he'll just be as good as he was last year. That's like, even if I project some of the other guys as a top 7 receiver, so it's not like he's taking a step back. So outrageous value. 65 overall, Kenneth Walker III, $18. I remember this because I took James Cook right before him, and I got James Cook for 45, and then I saw Walker go for 18. I was like, oh, man. So what do I like and don't like about Kenneth Walker? So first I'll go into a fun little story. I remember when Justin was talking about going to see Kenneth Walker against at Michigan State and watching him and thinking he's very good. I've watched Kenneth Walker since then. Since basically, I mean, I watched some of his college, obviously. I like to go through draft tape on running backs. That's a weird thing of mine. But Walker has become like not as good as I thought he would be, if that makes sense. The issue for him is the injuries. The injuries have really kind of like eaten him up because they haven't affected him so much as they've taken away his explosiveness, so much as they've impacted both his ability to develop as a pass catcher as well as his ability to pass block. So that part of his game has just not really developed. So, yeah, the caveat is kind of just like, it's interesting to see players as they go through their careers and what they become. He's coming off a year where he had the lowest amount of touches, yards, and touchdowns. I think he had 7 touchdowns, but he like barely broke 500 yards rushing last year. I think he had some amount of receptions, so I think close to 300 yards receiving. So he was better, but like it's tough for me with Kenneth Walker because I like Zach Charbonnet so much. I think Charbonnet is just a tremendous player. There's a few guys in the league where there's two backs, and I'm like, I think they both could start. I feel the same way about Jordan Mason, Aaron Jones, that I do about Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet. You have both, so lucky you. But Walker last year in the 11 games that he played, he was getting a lot of touches. He was good with those touches. He just breaks down a lot. I think he's still like a $32 player, so getting him for 18 is also a very good value. It's not like Brian Thomas Jr. value, but it's still pretty good. It's pretty good value. That's a lot. I just basically, yeah, we're talking like he's also half his value. You got him for half his price, essentially. He's only 24. He's entering year 4, so he came into the league really young at 20. I'm hoping, the hope for you is that Clint Kubiak is now the offensive coordinator. He used to be the offensive coordinator for Minnesota, but if we really want to go back, his father's Gary Kubiak, who was the Texans head coach in the late 2000s-ish with Matt Schaub, and then he was the Denver head coach with Peyton Manning, and he runs basically the West Coast system, essentially the same system that Shanahan and McVay both run, and it's an offshoot of Mike Shanahan back in the late 90s with John Elway. So, like, super long tree. But the point is, it's kind of like a quarterback under center, fullback, like drop back, like touch, screen game, kind of like misdirection. And I think that's good for Walker. I think Walker being able to be in the backfield and not be asked so much to, like, be in the shotgun, do the pass blocking, do, like, the screen game and all that, and just do what he's best at, which is just pure rushing, is a good thing for him. So I think he'll break 1,000 yards. I think he'll get another 300 yards receiving. I think he'll get his, like, 8-9 touchdowns. I think he is a solid RB2. Caveat is he's, if he stays healthy, but you don't really have to worry about that because you got Charbonnet. So I like Kenneth Walker, especially at the price. These two getting back-to-back, Brian Thomas Jr. and Kenneth Walker at 27 and 18 is ridiculous pricing. 73 overall, Garrett Wilson. Okay, got him for 23. He's also entering his 4th year, and he should be the guy with Devontae Adams now in LA with the Rams after being traded for, and the whole Aaron Rodgers experience not working. I think he ought to be... So it's weird. The Jets are weird. So I like Justin Fields from a talent standpoint. I think he's got a big arm. He's always been, like, very quick. He's got all the things all the traits I want. And when I watch him, I see some of those traits come out, and he does, like, good things at times. The problem is he's got a very slow release, and he's very, like, almost mechanical, robotic. Like, his release, his throwing motion's not clean. Like, go watch him, essentially. It's very slow, and it's almost like he's very indecisive. And he's always been that way since he's come into the league. Now, granted, he was failed in Chicago. Mike Tomlin did him no favors last year in Pittsburgh. So he's never really gotten the chance to develop. I still see him as the raw guy coming out of college. All of that is to say, Garrett Wilson is the number 1. He's only 25. I'm very hesitant to put him as a top 20 receiver, though, because I don't trust his quarterback. I don't trust Fields. Fields is not... The reason why Russell Wilson was starting late in the year is because Russell Wilson can still throw moon balls deep. Fields is not a good deep ball thrower, and that is what Garrett Wilson excels at, quite frankly. I think last year he had 101 catches. I don't think he's going to have 101 catches. I think he's going to have like 85. But he might have around the same yards as 1,100, and he'll probably get around the same touchdowns. It's just kind of weird thinking that as bad as the Jets were, Wilson's going to have a worse year. But I just don't... This is becoming a running offense if I'm looking at it. We have Justin Fields, we have Braylon Allen, we have Breece Hall still there. Last year, we tried to keep it open and do high flying, and it was bad. It was not good. Late in the year, though, they were still scoring, but it was not a good time. And I don't see Garrett Wilson being as good as he was last year in a run-heavy offense with a quarterback I don't trust. So there are going to be games where Fields rushes for like 100 yards, but passes for like 150. It's just not, it's not cognizant to like very much deep passing or anything like that. So I think you paid for what Wilson's worth at 23, which the other values, it's worth it. It doesn't really matter. Would I have preferred to like get some other players? Yeah, but like to each their own. So 75 overall. I mentioned it before. Zach Charbonnet, you got him for $11. I like Charbonnet. Funny enough, after Kenneth Walker's rookie year, they were just like, I don't really trust him to stay healthy. We need help. So Seahawks drafted Zach Charbonnet. I think Charbonnet is terrific. Funny enough, when Walker is hurt, Charbonnet basically is better. Funny enough, I think his fantasy average is better in the weeks that Walker is hurt than when Walker is like playing and Charbonnet's hurt, like vice versa. So they're both high second round picks. They're both 24. They're both good fits for this Clint Kubiak offense, as I mentioned before. Way down the tree of Mike Shanahan offense in the late 90s with John Elway and Terrell Davis and Shannon Sharp. But yeah, I like Charbonnet. Basically, the funny thing is, like, whenever Walker gets hurt, you just plug in Charbonnet and you get, like, essentially like a top 15, top 10 fantasy production. So, do I like Kenneth Walker? I like Charbonnet more, but together, they are a good, rock-solid RB2. Together. So, you had to pay up for Charbonnet. I made sure of that because I nominated him because I'm like, I like Charbonnet. So you got him for 11. You paid for maybe more for a backup than you normally would, but the situation is why. So I think he'll get around like 550 yards, maybe like 4 touchdowns, maybe like 200 yards receiving. Realistically, what Charbonnet is like, he is truly like your handcuff. And I know some of you guys like don't like your handcuffs, like I don't want to do it, but like, you got to be honest with yourself at some point where it's just like, is my goal to kind of get the most upside and be the best team like during the regular season, or is my goal to get through the regular season and win a title? And I think you got to be able to protect yourself, especially in our league, which has like no RB depth. And look at the bottom teams that have no RB depth. You got to be able to navigate a tough regular season. So I don't think Kenneth Walker is going to stay healthy the whole year. So I'm fine with Charbonnet. I think he's a fine player. I would love for one of them to just like go somewhere else and get the job. Like, these guys are better than anyone in Cleveland. They're better than anyone in Houston. They're better than anyone probably on the Giants. They're better than anyone on the Jets, even with Breece Hall. And I like Breece Hall. And they're both stuck in Seattle. And I don't like it, but they're both terrific players. Charbonnet, funny enough, is a better pass catcher and pass blocker than Walker, but Walker is such an elite rusher. So, yeah, interesting duo. All right, 76 overall. We spent $5 on Quinshon Judkins. So, what can we say? All right, so I remember Quinshon Judkins 2 years ago when he was at Ole Miss. He transferred last year to split carries with Travion Henderson. He also got paid to a lot. I think it was like, I'm going to say like $1.5 million by Ohio State. And, you know, he helped them win the national championship. He has the best broad jump at like 132. He has a 4.48 40. He can catch the ball a little bit, but he's not like a great pass catcher. Realistically, I saw later you picked up Dylan Sampson that Mac dropped. Like Jerome Ford there, I talked about Jerome Ford in Robbie's video. I think Jerome Ford's just a guy. I like Sampson. I think he's got like good traits. He's a better pass catcher than anything else. Realistically, the Browns drafted Judkins to be their Nick Chubb replacement. The issue is
Judkins got in trouble off the field. He is the only player left from this past draft who has not signed a contract, and that's probably because they're waiting for the NFL to make a decision on how long are we going to suspend this guy. So we just got Rashee Rice getting suspended 6 games. I imagine we'll get something for Judkins at some point. I imagine since he hasn't practiced and hasn't signed a contract, he is not in shape. So it's going to be some time. Like, even if you want to say he's suspended for like a month, the problem is he hasn't gone through training camp or anything, and he can't practice if he's suspended. So it's going to be at least 6 weeks, 8 weeks until like he's actually healthy, knows the playbook, and is able to play. So we don't really know that. So that's why he only went for $5. If we went purely on situation and talent, he's probably one of the better rookie running backs in this draft. I mean, what is it? Justin. Yeah, I already did Justin's video, obviously, and he spent 41 on Travion Henderson. For my money, if you go back, you look at the tape, I think Judkins is the better running back in Ohio State. And he's also in a better situation in Cleveland than Henderson is in New England. But again, the issue is we have no idea when he's going to play. We have no idea when he's going to sign a contract. We have no idea what shape he's in. So it's kind of like a waiting game. I can't really, because I don't know, I'm kind of just going to like have it and just assume we're not going to see him for half a year. So if that's the case, I'm going to project like 600 yards, like 4 or 5 touchdowns. He'll be like a top 25, well, I'll say top 20-ish running back. But a lot of things can happen between then and now. Maybe, I don't think Jerome Ford is going to take the job, but maybe Dylan Sampson does. Maybe Judkins gets suspended longer than I anticipate and he's not in shape. Maybe someone gets traded. I don't know. The problem is with something like this, you really don't know. So for $5, taking that risk, I think is like good in the sense of getting the upside because it doesn't cost you a lot. It's just kind of like, how long are we going to kind of do this? If it's like week 7 and we still don't really like, we won't even say that. If it's like week 6 or week 5, yeah, we're keep pushing this back. If it's week 5 and we haven't got an answer on the suspension, he hasn't signed a contract, I would consider cutting bait. Because even when he signs the contract, he's going to get suspended. And even if it's the suspensions for 4 games, like, he might come back in week 10. I don't know if they're going to give him the ball, to be quite honest with you, because by then you'll be more than halfway through the season. So, yeah, just a very strange situation. Hopefully it gets figured out. I don't mind you taking a $5 gamble on that, considering what rookie running backs Justin was spending on. Like, freaking Cam Scadaboo went for $5. Judkins is a better bet. He might not play for half a year. 90 overall. We spent $23. Cortland Sutton. I had Sutton last year. So, Sutton is solid. That's what I like to say. He was about just under a top 20 receiver last year. So he was like 17th, I want to say. He was very good to me. It was his breakout year. I kind of saw, this sounds mean, but I kind of saw it coming just because of how much Sean Payton kind of like propped up Bo Nix. I'm like, oh, this is kind of like what I thought way back with Drew Brees. Sean Payton knows his quarterbacks. So I think Sutton will have a good season. I think he'll get his 1,000 yards. I think he'll get his like 8 touchdowns. I think he'll be a rock solid kind of like RB wide receiver 3 kind of guy. I think everything I just mentioned is kind of like Garrett Wilson. That's the point. I think they're both like wide receiver 3 kind of guys. Very solid guys. They'll do something. But you're not going to get like a whole lot of upside for what you paid for. You basically paid for what they're worth. Again, I would have preferred some of the younger, cheaper guys, but I can't knock you getting like solid players who I like. They're good players. 97 overall, $7, Matthew Golden. Okay, so Golden's interesting. I think the fastest ever combine is Xavier Worthy, but this year the fastest wide receiver was Matthew Golden. He ran a 4.29 40-yard dash, and he was good last year with Texas and Quinn Ewers and Steve Sarkisian. I think he had like almost 1,000 yards on like 58 receptions. It's kind of weird because essentially the way I kind of look at it is the Packers have a lot of good receivers. I mean, Jaden Reed, Romeo Dobbs. They have Dontavian Wicks. So obviously, Christian Watson was drafted in the second round, blew out his ACL. I know that's Robbie's guy, but Watson has not really been healthy or good for his time in Green Bay. And I think they drafted Golden to essentially be what Watson has never become. I think he is also like a wide receiver 3, which I just mentioned with Garrett Wilson, and I just mentioned with Cortland Sutton. I think he'll get around 1,000 yards and 7 touchdowns. I like this better because you only paid $7 for him, and I think that's a steal for a guy who's possibly the number one on, quite frankly, a good offense in Green Bay. Like, they weren't great last year, but Jordan Love is a good quarterback, all right? They have good receivers. Josh Jacobs is a very good running back. They have a good offensive line. So I'm surprised Golden didn't go for more. I'm surprised Justin didn't try to fight you over this. I don't understand taking Tyler Warren for 10 with Daniel Jones, but Matthew Golden goes for 7 with Jordan Love. So that don't make any sense to me. This was a good pickup, a very savvy, sneaky rookie pickup, and that's good depth for you. He could possibly even start for you. I really like Golden. We got to see what he is, though, because he is a rookie, so it's going to take a little time. You know, is he the number 1? Is he the number 2? Is he coming out of the slot? I assume he's the deep ball guy, though, in Green Bay. 136, we spent $4. Austin Eckler. So, yeah, this is year 2 in Washington. He's become more of a pass receiver. He's not the guy like he was with the Chargers, where they were running him into the ground. I think he got hurt towards the end of last year. And the other thing is Washington doesn't really use him at all near the goal line, which sucks. But with Brian Robinson Jr. trade to San Francisco, I imagine that means more opportunity for Eckler. I mean, he's competing with like Crosby Merritt, who they brought in, and gosh, I don't even remember their other running back. His name escapes me. But the point is, Washington is like kind of up the river at running back right now, and the guy with the most experience is Eckler, and the guy who has the best pass blocking is Eckler, and the guy who's the best pass catcher is Eckler. So I'm not really sure, like, if they're going to rush him too much. Chris Rodriguez. Okay, so Chris Rodriguez Jr. is the third running back. And they have Jeremy McNichols, funny enough, former Buck. Yeah, Eckler is the pass-catching receiver. I think he's probably going to get, he'll get more rushing than he did last year, but probably like 400 yards rushing, maybe 50 receptions, though, for another 400 yards, maybe like 7 or 8 touchdowns. He's kind of like a flex-ish kind of player, but I think that's good for $4 for a running back, considering some teams don't even have like a second running back. That's a really good deal. I don't think he's exciting. I don't think you really want to play him in like the playoffs because that signals that your team doesn't have a lot of upside. But he's the kind of player that helps you get you through the season, and is the type of player you want to possibly trade away when someone else runs into injury issues at RB. So, good pick, solid pick, good player. Kind of in the same vein, 164 overall for $1. Najee Harris, $1. That's just wild. I can't. I don't even know what to make of that. Oh, we actually skipped somebody earlier. But okay, before we get to him, 139, $2, Jordan Love. All right. So again, we talked about this before. Love is kind of like your weak spot. I like Jordan Love. He came out really strong last year. His first 4 games, if I remember, he was like a top 5 fantasy quarterback. But after that, he was pretty bad. He doesn't run a whole lot. I think he only ran for like 83 yards on the season, so that kind of hurts you in fantasy. So you need him to be like high, heavy passing. But the problem is, last year under LaFleur with Josh Jacobs, they ran the ball a lot. I want to say they ran the ball 46% of the time, which is pretty high coming from like a Sean McVay coaching tree. I think having Matthew Golden and having that stack is good. I think Golden is probably the number one. Love, though, if last year is any indication, they're going to run the ball more. And if that's the case, I don't really love Love as a starting fantasy quarterback. I think he'll pass for more, so he'll probably be around like Dak Prescott with like 3,900 passing yards and maybe like 25 touchdowns. But, he's got to get more rushing, so maybe like 100. But we're talking like this is like QB 18, QB 19 kind of stuff. That's not a starter in our league. Everything I just described is not a starter. So this is definitely like something you're going to want to look at where you're just like, I mean, last year you were looking for a quarterback, you're trying to trade for Baker. There's quite a few teams in our league right now, coming out of the draft with 2 quarterbacks. You're definitely, considering the depth everywhere else at your team, you're definitely going to want to consider doing that because everything was set up very well for Love last year. I don't like Matt LaFleur, but the offensive line's good. The receivers are good. The running back's really good. And they were just like, hey, we should run the ball more. And I was like, okay, kind of makes sense. But for fantasy purposes, that's just like, not great. Not great for the quarterback. All right, back to Najee. So 164 overall, Najee Harris. He was drafted in the first round by the Steelers. I knew what he was coming out of Alabama. He is still what he was coming out of Alabama. To be fair, he is one of the only players in the last 20 years to start his career first 4 seasons with 1,000 yards rushing. But that, for me, has more to do with just his volume than anything else. He hardly ever gets hurt, and he's never finished a season with less than 255 carries. But I think he's going to finish this year with less than 255 carries. Even with Jim Harbaugh and Greg Roman, I went over this in Justin's video, I don't really see Najee Harris as much of a threat. In the same way I view Jamal Williams, in the same way I kind of view, Jamal Williams is a great, kind of like late career, like Mark Ingram. I kind of see Najee Harris as kind of like that plodding, bigger guy who you kind of can push the pile but isn't a great pass catcher. And he's going to probably play second banana to Hampton. I think they'll split carries to start the year, but it's only a matter of time until Hampton takes the job. So I think maybe like 500 yards receiving, or 500 yards rushing, and then like 100 yards receiving. The caveat is, if Hampton gets hurt, Harris is a great stand-in, and that's a run-heavy offense. So I'm genuinely surprised that, again, Justin decided to go, I'm going to get Cam Scattaboo. And I'm kind of like, well, what happens if Amari and Hampton gets hurt and you're relying on him to be like your top 5-ish running back? Najee Harris, that's his job, and Scattaboo is going to be better. Even if in a world where we live in, where Tyrone Tracy gets hurt, I have a hard time believing Scattaboo is going to do anything to really be the unquestioned number one guy. Whereas if Hampton gets hurt, I definitely think Najee Harris is the number one guy. It's not going to be great. I'm not going to enjoy it, but he's definitely going to get the ball a lot, and that's realistically what you're kind of doing with Harris. So I know he's on your IR right now because of the eye injury with the fireworks accident, so that's a whole other deal. But we'll get into that later because we still got another player. Still got another player to do later that you just picked up. But $175, $2, Rico Dowdle. So on Sayers' team last year, starter for the Cowboys. Surprise, they let him go. He only got like $1 million more from Carolina to be a backup than what Javonte Williams got in Dallas, which is bananas to me. Because he was average, but like what the Cowboys got is below average. So he had 1,000 yards. He worked his way up from basically being like the third string guy to being the backup to being the lead. He played all 16 games. He only had 5 touchdowns, so that was kind of like, meh, not great. He is 27, so he's on the back end of his prime now, and he's definitely the backup to Chuba Hubbard. That is Chuba Hubbard's job. But Donald's a good player. Like, it's even with his average efficiency, being able to do that on 235 carries is not easy. Taking that amount of punishment and even doing average efficiency means that you have some talent. I still think his lateral quickness isn't great, but his vision is what is his saving grace. He's got pretty good vision. He's able to see and make reads in the hole. All of that's to say, again, kind of like I just went with Najee Harris. He's the clear number 2 banana. So he's probably going to get like 400 yards rushing, 148 yards receiving. He's definitely someone, whoever has Hubbard, I would definitely be interested in getting Dawdle, though. Because Hubbard, I mean, I guess in this sense, Hubbard's not a top 7 running back, so maybe not. But if something were ever to happen to Hubbard, it's obviously going to be Dawdle's job. And Dawdle's a good player. So even maxed out, he's kind of like a flex guy, even as a starter. But I don't mind it in the sense that you can see how that team shakes out. Because Hubbard, while he has his breakout last year, hasn't been a good player like his whole career. It's kind of like how I feel about like who Robbie just took with the Bengals, which is Chase Brown. It's just like you've been waiting, and Hubbard finally had his breakout, but I'm just like, okay, I'm happy you got your extension. I'm happy you got your breakout, but it took you a while. So he could still kind of fall flat on his He could fall flat on his face, and we shall see. Next, 204, $3, Juwan Jennings. I think this is a terrific pick. I'm surprised Jennings went for so low. If I'd known Jennings would have gone for that low, I would have probably saved up a little more money to go get him. I think you got him, at like 204. I spent $5 with Chris Godwin, and he's going to miss like at least a quarter of the season. So Jennings last year was his breakout year. Obviously, Deebo Samuel got hurt. Brandon Ayuk got hurt. Everything was kind of like going kind of bananas. He had like a 47-point game week 3 last year, which was the highest, I think, of any receiver on the season. I think things will obviously be different now that Deebo Samuel is gone. He's in Washington, and Ayuk is hurt and gone for half the year. Even with Ricky Pearsall, who I like, who Robbie has, I think getting Juwan Jennings, who is in all likelihood the number 2 to Pearsall, possibly the number 1 and Pearsall's the number 2, is a good call. I think he'll be around what he was last year, which is like 1,000 yards, maybe 5 touchdowns. So fringe-esque wide receiver 3 flex kind of guy. But that works for you right now because we don't really know what the 49ers are going to look like. I think the 49ers are going to be better. I think Jennings won't be the number 1 to Pearsall, but I think he'll, like, I went over, like, why I liked George Kittle. I went over why I liked Pearsall. I feel the same kind of way about Jennings. Like, I know that's 3 mouths to feed. I know that's 3 guys who I'm saying could get 1,000 yards. But I just feel like the 49ers offense has got to be better than it was last year. We forget 2 years ago how good they were with Deebo and with Ayuk and Kittle and McCaffrey. So it's out of our mind. But they are still an elite offense. They're still they got to be top 10, if not top 5 offenses in football. Brock Purdy got his extension. So getting Jennings kind of as your last guy on your squad, he's probably, look at your starting lineup. He's literally in your flex. That's perfect. Like, I think he's exactly that. I think he's a flex, low-end wide receiver 3, possibly for more, considering what the 49ers offense comes into. It's just funny for me. I have Jennings and freaking Golden around the kind of production that you're expecting from Wilson or Sutton, and you paid for Wilson or Sutton at like more than triple their cost. But that's auction draft, man. So I like the value a lot. I think the last thing I'll mention is I saw you picked him up in free agency today off of waivers. You got Dylan Sampson. I know Mac dropped him. I'm sad Mac dropped him. I thought that was a mistake. I think Sampson's a good player. He's only 20, so he's the youngest player, I want to say, in the league. He's not as obviously talented as Judkins, so you're keeping him essentially to kind of like, I think he's better than Jerome Ford, but he's not as good as Judkins long term. But we don't know what's going on with Judkins. So I don't know why teams at the bottom of our league did pick up Sampson, considering he's going to at least get touches in week 1. But I think it was a good pickup. I think Sampson's a good player. I think if Judkins wasn't there, I think he would be the number 1 running back. I think he'll start the year possibly. Cleveland's so weird. Like, I know they're probably going to install Jerome Ford as the number 1, but frankly, Sampson ought to be the number 1. Either way, they probably don't trust him enough, but I think he'll be in a timeshare to start the year, which is good value for getting someone essentially for free. So we'll see what happens with Judkins, but I think Sampson is a good stand-in until that whole situation's sorted out and Judkins comes back. So I talked a lot with like Robbie's team. I talked a lot with like Justin's team. I think your team is more solid than good. I still give you like a B on the draft. I think you have some quality players. Your star players, obviously Jonathan Taylor. Obviously your quarterback's not great. Obviously you're waiting to see what happens with some of the running backs on the back end. You'll be fine. Unlike Justin, I am confident in your ability to get through the regular season and compete for a championship. Really, the question is more along the lines of, when do you go find your second star? Because I don't really see it on your team. I mean, maybe Brian Thomas Jr., I guess you could say he's like a top 5 receiver. So I guess that can kind of be your second star, quasi to Jonathan Taylor. But you are kind of like a move away. You're like a star player away from being like the creme de la creme of the league. Now, to be fair, I don't think there's a creme de la creme of the league currently. I don't think there's like a heavy favorite. So if you wanted to become that heavy favorite and you went and got another star player, I could definitely see you being that favorite. And you're the team who's tied for going to the finals most. So it makes sense. Yeah. Just a good draft, a lot of good players, a lot of quality. You used your money perfectly. Like, no notes. Perfect. Like, I only have you being my number 3 and not like my number 1. Just purely in this case out of like upside. Like, I think like Justin's variable upside for me coming out of the draft is very like, the floor is lower, but the ceiling's higher. For Robbie, I think his ceiling's a little higher than yours, but your floor is great, and there's something to be said about that. I think you'll be a top 4 team. I think you'll make the playoffs, obviously. I think you'll push for another title. I think realistically, your only goal right now is to kind of like sort it out, figure out who you want on your team to start, and then kind of be on the lookout for finding that star player to put you over the top. Because once you do that, then you're kind of head-hunting. Because then, again, like this year, I don't think there's like that super elite team. You can become that super elite team. You're the team best positioned to do that. So, yeah, overall, very good draft, Brian. You've done a very good job. I remember we had that draft conversation years ago, and you've really kind of run with that. So it's good to see you succeed and really like grow. This was interesting draft because obviously you went away from like getting all your value receivers, but I think the pivot was good. You were having a tough time with Patrick sniping you, and you just went running back, and I think it worked for you. Getting that depth will definitely be something that you can move around later, because running backs are currency in our league. So, yeah, Like it. I like it a lot.